In a landmark moment for India, the Lok Sabha has passed the maternity bill. Now, this bill gives women 26 weeks of maternity leave for up to 2 children versus the earlier limit of 12 weeks. In addition to that, the bill also gives adoptive mothers with babies younger than 3 months and surrogate mothers as well 12 weeks of leave. The bill also states that a creche facility is a must for any organization with over 50 employees. Those are just some of the highlights of the maternity bill that has been cleared by the Lok Sabha. Joining us now to discuss the implications of this. Will this actually make the lot of women in the workforce better? Will this improve India's poor record of women participation in the workforce or not? Or in fact, go the opposite way? Joining us to discuss all of that, Kiran Shaw, Chairperson and Managing Director at Biocon, Jessie Paul, the former CMO of Wipro and the current CEO of Paul Writer, and Sairee Chahal, the founder of Sheroes. Appreciate you joining us here. Kiran, let me start by asking you, I've just given you some of the highlights as far as this bill is concerned. As I pointed out, we've got some pretty dismal data as far as participation of women in the workforce in India is concerned, both urban as well as rural. Will this help matters? Will this keep women in the workforce? Will this improve the rate and the record of India when it comes to female participation in the workforce?
Well, you know, Shereen, I think I welcome everything about this bill, but I'm afraid that the 26-week maternity leave is perhaps going to create a selection bias. Because I think as a woman, I welcome it, but as an employer, I think it will be very difficult to basically sustain a 6-month paid maternity leave, especially when you look at the global average, which is 14 weeks. I think 12 weeks, being increased to a certain level is fine, but I think 6 months in a country like India, I really worry whether it will not create a further gender bias.
So you think it will actually make matters worse?
Well, you know, it's only the 26 weeks that I worry about. The rest of the bill is fine. I think the creche is already something that is mandated. The 12-week maternity leave for adopting mothers or single mothers is fine. Surrogate mothers is fine. But, you know, I really worry about the 26 weeks that they have actually introduced, which I think will not be that easy to basically sustain. And, you know, I wish they would actually consult working women about what they want.
Okay, let me put that question now to Sairee. Sairee, do you agree with the point that Kiran is making? And I just want to look at some data now because, Canada has 50 weeks of maternity leave, Norway 44 weeks, and now India comes in at number 3 at 26 weeks. But if you take a look at the record of Norway, for instance, whether it is labor force participation, whether it is gender gap in the workplace, whether it is women in board representation, of course, they have quotas for that. Norway is significantly doing better, in comparison. So do you believe that this will actually work as an advantage or as a disadvantage in India?
So I think from a women's point of view, it's a fantastic move. But I think there are 2 things to consider. One, it's a step in isolation. As a country, look at us. We don't have basic investments in healthcare, in education. We don't have the concept of social security. And this is basically, a more of the job left to the private sector. You know, it still doesn't sort of consider the informal sector, the self-employed. So it is definitely an act in isolation, and it's not built in the Indian context. Also, you know, from a working woman's point of view, it's pertinent to allow that time off, maybe split that time off, or allow for paternity week or shared leave. Because, in this case, we are also reinforcing the stereotype that caregiving is only a woman's job.
Yeah.
You know, and we are already a super patriarchal society. It's a great move, but it's very isolationist in how it is being done.
Okay, on the issue of paternity leave, there is no provision for private sector workers. Civil servants are entitled to 15 days leave before or up to 6 months post-delivery. And when the minister, Maneka Gandhi, this is in the Indian Express, was asked about the issue of paternity leave, she said, "We find that men are availing their sick leave for a month to take care of the child." Let's see how many men do that. I will be happy to give it to a man, but it will be just a holiday. He won't do anything. Jessie Paul, does it perpetuate the patriarchal mindset further?
So at Paul Writer, we're a small firm, but we do offer paternity leave, and I can say that people have availed of it, and I don't think they were just out on a holiday. So I think, first is start with a level of trust. The second point is that even in Canada, not every father is taking the paternity leave. In fact, there was a lovely interview on why they don't do it, and the fears are the same as that a woman has. When I come back, will I still be relevant? Though you're giving me seniority, I will lose out on skill sets. And if I'm a smaller company, I mean, they are going to have to find a backup plan or a replacement. So what happens when I come back? So those men give the same fears in interviews that a woman would also have, and which definitely is how they also view someone else's maternity leave. So I think paternity would have sent a signal, at least, that we're looking at it as a family picture, not just, woman and baby.
Yeah. So what would you like to see, as Sairee was pointing out and Kiran said as well, that, let's not look at this bill in isolation. There's a lot more that needs to come together to make this work. What would you now like to see if you believe that this, in a sense, may create that selection bias that Kiran was talking about?
So one factor which I was really shocked by is that nearly half of women in India have to seek permission before they go to the local Kirana store. Over, I think, 50%, 70% have to seek permission before they can go to a family health center. Right? So if you're not addressing these kind of societal biases, then this is just isolation. We're not, actually trying to sort out those bigger issues. We're just trying to palm this off again to this, private sector. I would have liked to have seen the government support this for everybody, as in whether you're in, employment or self-employed or whatever. If you're a woman and you're having a baby, then, and if you have contributed to, let's say, paying taxes or whatever, then you should get back some portion of that for your maternity. That will also make employers far more supportive of this move. The second is, address all the other issues we have in terms of where's the pool, the recruitment pool, mandate a certain percentage. If women workforce participation in India is 27%, then can you show that at least, maybe at least 20% of your employees are women? Because otherwise you're creating a situation where a company with 100% women is at a disadvantage to a company which chooses to have like none. There's no penalty for that.
Well, that's a valid point that you're making. But Kiran, let me come back to you now, because this is going to be an issue that corporate India grapples with. We were anyway slow on the uptick as far as women being represented on boards of companies are concerned. It's now been, in a sense, been made mandatory to at least have one. And we got off to a slow start even on that. But do you believe that this is actually now going to be something that will create a bigger hurdle for women who are entering the workforce?
That's what I worry about, Shereen. In fact, if you see an OECD report linking, this negative selection with maternity leave in developing countries, you can clearly see that this does not actually improve women's opportunities in the job market. And I think we need to perhaps re-look at this 26 weeks and perhaps in sort of a flexible framework over a year, saying that a woman who delivers a baby can take a total of 26 weeks over a certain period of time in order to tend to her maternal duties. But to give it as a one stretch, 26 weeks, I don't think is a welcome step.
Okay, the bill does have a provision which allows for work from home, provided the nature of work permits that. And Sairee, you know this better than all of us here. Do you think that that could perhaps be a segue to make this work?
Absolutely. I think connection to the world of work is really important. And one of the things that we know women in India have a 48% dropout rate, and maternity is a big reason behind that. And making sure women stay aligned to the workforce, One key challenge that we see when we talk to women is being out of touch. And the market moves on, and we know that jobs are not growing and jobs are becoming more technical in nature, which means staying connected to work, staying skilled, staying relevant is even more important than ever. And I think somewhere the impact of this bill itself is a little limiting, because we know corporate jobs / formal sector jobs are not growing as expected, and automation is taking over, and a lot of micro tasks / sharing economies coming in. In that backdrop, while it's a very relevant bill, and some companies will definitely make it very, very useful for their employees, but from a larger perspective, a macro perspective, I think adding more nuances to this would be very, very necessary.
So give me the 2 or 3 things that you would like the government to incorporate. We're running out of time. I'm going to give each one of you one final minute. Sairee, let me start by asking you.
Right. So I think one is being able to allow, being able to split the time off over a period of time, maybe 3 years, because a child is small. The first 3-4 years are very important, and if a parent has a little flexibility on being able to spend time, maybe 2 weeks at a stretch in 4 slots, I think it's more relevant and more useful and more practical. Second is, making remote work or work from home even more mainstream. Companies can start looking at these arrangements for men as well, so that it becomes part of the organizational culture. And thirdly, of course, I guess, the whole backup around, other layers. It's basically one provision and there we go. I think we need a lot more provisions to come in, especially on rest of the healthcare / education spend.
Sure. Okay. 1 minute to you, Jessie.
Sure. So one is, I think the government should pick up at least a share of this cost. The second is, I don't like this creche idea, because the quality of the creche is unspecified. I would rather that it was mandated that you contribute to some fund and we create some world-class creches that father or mother can use. The third is to push paternity leave, because I disagree with Sairee that maternity makes women drop out. I think it is a lack of family sharing of responsibilities that is making women drop out.
Okay, the good idea is there. And Kiran, the final word to you.
No, I think I agree with all the comments that I've made. I myself said that I think the 26 weeks needs to be spread over time, maybe 2 years or 3 years, and not lumped into one big, leave bracket. I think paternity leave is certainly something that we ourselves subscribe to in our organization. And thirdly, I think I completely agree that, with Jessie, that creches should be actually not just mandated within organizations, because they can become, depending on the, the size of the organization, it can become really not something that is doing of any use. But I think you need to have creches close by which mothers can go to, daycare centers, so to speak, So I really believe that this bill needs to be nuanced a lot more, because otherwise I think we will really head for a huge selection bias, which will get women out. You will be deselecting women out of the job market. I don't want that to happen.
Well, absolutely, and that would defeat the very purpose of what the government's intent is behind passing this bill. Kiran Shaw, Sairee and Jessie, thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18 with your thoughts, your ideas and your nuances. But